Ba-dum-dum-dum-dum. How y'all doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good.
No, sit down. So.
And I keep it cold in here so you don't fall asleep. And I'm always hot. Have a seat. So, what?
I don't want to.
You don't want to sit? Cool. Let me get this out of the way. A lot of the stuff that I do, it requires having a base understanding of some things. So we're just gonna go to the beginning and do some Q&A. Is that cool? Right. Cool. So, does anybody know what music really is? Like, I know that's a weird open-ended question about what is music to you, and then what is music?
I don't really know. I guess it's just sound.
Sounds. Yeah. Frequencies. That's a good one. What else?
Rhythm.
Yeah. RHY. And what that's referred to as pulse. Anything else? Like there's millions of words to describe this, like contour, shape, form, but that's just further down the road of nonsense. But that basically is it. Frequency and pulse. Music in itself, in a nutshell, is something along those lines. Music is a collection of things that people do, that have done, that compound upon themselves as an idea. But there's not one definitive way to do anything. Hence, you could take a guitar and play with your teeth like Jimi Hendrix. Or you can put it on your lap and tippity tap like Andy McKee. And sometimes it's really good, you know what I mean? So there's not a given way to do anything. And that should be charismatic of life. So what we kind of do is we take these two and we build something called the foundations. You guys know what a foundation is, right?
Yeah.
You ever been in a house in Puna where somebody didn't build their house with pier blocks? They just put sticks in the ground and like they're like wondering why it's shifting to the side, and it's pretty amazing, isn't it? There'll come a point in music where when you're looking at it, you'll be like, oh, that's why. Some of the things that you'll learn in music down the road that stumped you in the beginning, you'll be like, oh, that's why. It's because you put the time and effort to understand one thing and move into another. Foundations of music that we deal with. Can anybody name a vocabulary word which is charismatic of doing this? Ha or ha. Well, what did I just do right there? Can you use vocabulary words to explain it?
I guess, you spoke, you sang.
I did. I used a tonal note and then I used a type of action. One, when you just push air through a diaphragm, like, it's a note, a tone, right? It's super flat. When you move the note up and down, pulsing little patterns of air in between it, it's either called vibrato in a singing voice or a trill for different types of music. These are called accents. They're also called ornaments. Ornaments. I can't spell a draw, so if I spell it wrong, correct me. If I can't draw, say, what are you doing? And I'll try to do better. Accents. Accidentals is actually what they're called. Dentals. And then we've got another one. Can anybody name what it is to get quieter? In music, if you're singing or something and somebody's like, I don't know.
Fading?
Yeah, it's like a fade. The technical term is called a decrescendo or decrescendo. Because the opposite of getting gradually softer is to get loud. Oh, look at you. Is to get gradually louder, and that's called a crescendo. So the whole idea, these deal with something called dynamics. Have you ever heard of any of these words?
Yeah, I've heard those words before.
Cool. In the context of the musics? No. All right. Well, then let's nail it out this way. When we use accents, we are using them with these things called notes. So we have to know what notes are. When we're using those notes, we take notes like this and we put things above them or below them, and they give those notes different types of feelings. Like these notes hold out the duration, morango, or a tenuto, or a fermata. They're just names for different types of markings. And these markings that we see here are called ornamentals and accidentals. They all fall on the staff, so that's probably a good place to start. Can anybody name any of the clefs? And if you can't name a clef, do you know what a clef is?
Isn't there a treble clef?
There is. That's probably the one that most people know.
I mean, I see him right there, so.
Oh, yeah. Where is? Up top in the red? Yeah, for sure. Those are the two most predominant ones, but those really only came about after the 1600s. Before that, we only had one clef. I mean, or close to that.
Was that the first one?
It was the first one that they did because before there was this. Like, does anybody know what this is called?
Staff.
Staff. Yeah, or stave. When you have a staff and then we put bars on the end, it defined a particular amount of space. And does anybody know another word for space? Just maybe a little science lesson here. Does anybody know what this is in science? An X. Or a Cartesian plane. Ever heard that word? Cool. Named after surname, Cartesian plane talks about axes. One goes up and one goes sideways. Yeah, X and Y. Not sure which one's which. It's been a while since. Pretty sure X goes up. Although, doesn't matter now. What we do is when you do these on Cartesian planes, you plot numbers. So in mathematics, I didn't understand the point of this is because I was kind of a do-to-do kid. Now I do because I know what a computer is. I wasn't able to do this for one or two equations, but when you realize computers do millions of these computations, what it turns into is artwork, pixelization. If a whole computer string is a Cartesian plane and you write a program that says put a dot at 1, 1. 1 over, 1 up, boom. If the computer program says put a dot at 2, 5, you go, no, boom. Over a period of time of plotting these dots, you come, remember I can't draw. You come up with like a smiley face or something, right? So I wasn't able to imagine that in my brain, but now because of computers, I'm like, okay, science, sodium, chlorine, put them together, you get table salt. I can imagine that structure now in my head because of computers. Does that make sense? These things are both the same, so is math and music. So when we're talking about like viewing, plotting things, before the invention of this, there was just usually some dude in some church going, ladies sing this, men sing this. And everybody knew the songs because there weren't like 2 billion songs. There was like 10. Does that make sense? So like everybody knew the music and they used a system of, before even solfege was created. Does anybody know what the solfege is? Solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and do. Have you ever heard that before? Okay, cool. In music, when you do choral music, not reading notes for playing for an instrument, you would be accompanied with most of this old type of music with 3 things: a harp, a lute, and a flute. These Renaissance instruments basically allowed the singers to be the main staple of any musical event. All of the music that was written at a certain point would have been seen here as this being C, because C became concert pitch. And then all of these notes went up and down from there. There weren't multiple staves. There was only one staff. And at a certain point, some of that old written music on stuff from like 14th, 15th, 16th century just looks crazy. It looks like beautiful artwork and like there's stuff drawn on it, and none of the notation makes sense because there wasn't a particular way to do everything. It was still a work in progress. Kind of cool, huh? So now the staves that we have, they combine. This is our treble clef, which is really, really popular. It incorporates the singing voices of soprano and alto and maybe mezzo, tenor. And then this one is called the hard A, like Wago, bass. Bass is a fish. Bottom dweller, delicious if you like that. All right, tenor and then bass. There are other things like bass is here, but there's a baritone is in between for the male singing voice, and then there's mezzo, which means medium tenor or medium alto. Basically, mezzo tenor is a alto, and then there's mezzo soprano, those female voices that could go ridiculously high. And at this point, because we're going to be doing everything, let's test everybody's vocal range. You're going to hate it. I hope you do, because this is the thing that I hated. Little note, I walked into a choir class, and I was delivering a piece of paper from another teacher, and they said, hey, why don't you join the choir? I was like, hey, no. I didn't know I could do music and stuff. And in front of a group of ladies standing on the risers singing, I was tested in front of a group of 30 people that laughed at me. It was extremely embarrassing. And then after that, I realized that those people in that room were super awesome, and they were a safe space because everybody was goofy. We were all nerds. Does that make sense? Like choir, music. It's when you enjoy music, it's different. I wasn't being made fun of. I made fun of people too, and it becomes a you work at it kind of thing. I learned how to not take myself so seriously, not get a big head at that point. Learning how to sing with a group of people who were kind of good and kind of not, and one teacher who kind of knew what they were doing, you take from it what you will. So having said that, take from these classes, take from these classes what you will. All right, hit your favorite note, any note. Vocally, orally, I want to hear it. And if you don't want to sing a note, can you go like a chicken? See how I was almost immediately able to find it? There are three types. Tone deaf, meaning you cannot hear pitches and intervals, they just do not make sense. It's all bad. Relative pitch, you hit this note and I heard that. It's close. It's within probably 5 notes, minor, second, major, third. And then there's perfect pitch. So, close your eyes. Find that note on the piano. There it is. Over a period of time, you will get within that 5. Does that make sense? I mean, you hear the high notes, you hear the low notes. Most of us that play an instrument are not used to playing the whole thing. Like on guitar, I stayed right here in the first 15 years. I had no clue how to go up. When you start playing in something other than just like C and stuff like that, we'll start hearing more. Ready? Let's hit that note again. One more. Cool. So right here to here, that's great, and that's a 5th. Now let's go up. Okay, so yeah, we got about right here. What you just exhibited me is you have about an octave range, which is great. When we work on music, your total goal, while you're still maturing, your voice is going to go through weird, crazy changes in the next 5 years. You will do stuff like each week you'll be able to get just a little bit more of those frequencies because you're practicing on it. Another great thing to do is, can you hear these notes? You ready? How about this? Wonderful. You've got a good singing voice. Good job. Hit a note, any note. Cool. Can you hit an octave from there? Okay. Here, let's go back now. Cool. Almost like you got the low C, but your strongest note is your F. Cool. So let's go upwards. Open your mouth. Cool. So what we're experiencing right here is your vocal cords are still also getting to that point. You're also going through physical transit, blah, blah, blah. Long story short is your octave range goes lower, but if you strengthen your higher notes, your lower notes get better as well. Never smoke cigarettes, ever. I'll say it once. Never smoke cigarettes. Not just because nicotine's horrible for you, but it kills your voice. Don't ever smoke cigarettes. Having said that, do what you want. When we do these notes, moving up in nature, going down in nature, the whole idea is to do exactly what I was just doing there. Work on them together. You don't always have to work on one. And you have pitch. I could hear that you could find your pitch notes. So can you do a... Wonderful. When you're working on the higher notes, what I'll work on with you is something called falsetto.
Falsetto.
Yes, it's a musical term which talks about this. When you hit this note, all of the air is coming from your diaphragm is called your full voice. It allows you to have a full, consonant, nice note, very thick. When you go up, here's my breaking point. That's my full voice. That's about my highest note this morning. The whole idea, all these notes right here, they were my falsetto. I can't hit those with my full voice. I rely on myself being able to hear the music and blend with it at a certain volume, which isn't horrible. Does that make sense? Cool. It works better when we're trying to harmonize and blend. Good job. I got your register, and now I know what to work on for. All right. So vocabulary word we just hit was falsetto. That works for both ladies and males. And then as far as the notes, we're looking for a full voice to start singing in. When I was testing Titan, we did an arpeggio. You and I did. We played a 6 chord. When you were singing, you registered more when you were accompanied. So the idea is, can you hear those notes in your head on your own for a specific? And my favorite thing is like when we get into music theory, can you like look at the circle fifths and go, ah, and hear like C, ah. And when you think,
just certain notes.
yeah,
I just think of like a song like when it's like G, I'm like thinking of Beethoven. Da, 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 da,
yeah, excellent.
Then when I think of whatever.
That is excellent. That's retentive memory, and I did that too. When I started playing guitar, mine was like Grateful Dead or Dave Matthews or Brubeck or something. So I could always kind of hear a E flat because I'm used to hearing Tay 5. Dun, 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 dun. Cool, you ready? Hit a note, any note. I thought you were saying, like you didn't know what note to hit. That's great. Ooh, that's a good range from there. That's almost an octave. Your strongest note would have been around here, and you can work on these, and we'll work on those, right? Let's go up. And don't be afraid to deafen me. Project past me, like you're singing to the bench out there. There's where your falsetto comes in. You, when you get confidence, you will be a mezzo soprano. Does that make sense to you? Right now, it's real timid. Everything in life is kind of like this. When you're like, ah! And you just embody the sound of loudness, you will definitely be soprano to a mezzo soprano. Which means your goal is to work on strengthening those high notes so you can be the one person in your vocal unit that's able to hit those notes. Cool? Right on. Try this for me. Cool, you're able to see melodies and then replicate them. I'm sure we all can because we were all able to do that. Very good job. Thank you. So, what I did was I took an evaluation of what those vocal ranges are, and the whole idea is to add 5 notes above and below each way. You know, so when you're singing and you're doing your thing, you don't think anybody's listening to you. You know, you're in the shower. Try to do like ha da 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 da. even though they sound like the same note. Force yourself. Try to get those lower notes, and eventually you'll notice just a little thing. Also, when you wake up in the morning, your voice goes lower for some reason, and when you are well warmed up during the day, your voice can go way higher and lower. It's very cool. All right. So what we just did, we played on the piano, so let's do a little piano recognition and how to use basic vocabularies and foundations of music to understand what we're talking about right here. On the piano, I said relative pitch. I said perfect pitch. I said tone deaf. All those kind of require knowing what the 7 notes of music are. Does anybody know what the 7 notes of music are?
Like all the names for 'em?
Yeah.
Like C, D, A, you know, all.
Let's throw them in order. What's the first alphabetical note of the music alphabet? A for alpha. Does everybody know where alphabet comes from? Cool. Greek words. A lot of music comes from concepts of Roman and Greek, and a lot of it is, from the Stoics, Pythagoras, Pliny, Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Elder, Cicero, Aristotle, Archimedes. All these people's names are people that developed everything we do. Mathematics, music, all the foundations of art, stuff like that. So, in the video, if you feel to look those people up, awesome. They're amazing. It'll break your brain. So yeah, we have our musical alphabet, alpha, beta. Alpha being the first letter in the Greek alphabet, beta being the second. Crimson. Decib. Epsilon. Phi. And then what? Gamma. So when we go through all of our our Greek lettering systems, the first seven of the alphabet for the Western ear is going to be these. It always goes there. So if we go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, we get assigned notes to these. We mostly teach things in the key of C. Does anybody know why we teach things mostly in the key of C?
Because C has no flats or no sharps.
Right. The best way to see these is when we have these letters in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So do you see how the Roman numerals are on this side and the Greek lettering system is on the other? It's an amalgamation betwixt the two. Not to get too much into it, but all music essentially was religious music. It only made a delineation from being non-secular and secular in our pretty much lifetime. Does that make sense? Cool. So almost all of this was based off of some sort of praise or giving it up to a higher power or a concept of that. Or all of these terms come out of that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, and ti. In the Western ear, we use these, and then in the Eastern ear, we do not. There's a whole different solfege. It's not called the solfege. They use ma, pa, ra. I mean, they do have a T. It also is the 7th. The re is also the 2, but long story short, they have a different lettering system. So does anybody know what a sitar is? Or a vina? Sitar, you ever heard? Cool. It's a Middle Eastern instrument that has a gourd and a fingerboard, but it's not like the Western ear where you press your finger down on the strings. It has metal bars or frettings, they're called, same, that are curved, that the strings lay on, that you play over the top of and bend. Those are tuned to a resonation called synthetics, and then over the top you have a scale. So all the tunings of a sitar is tuned like you'll have a fourth, a third. No, not a third. You'll have a fourth, a fifth, a 1, and then multiple resonations of that consonant, right? The resonation strings will be all the chromatic scale, and the sitar is generally tuned to C sharp or D. So long story short, in the Eastern ear, in the Eastern world, music is more like the experience of it. Like they view life, they experience life. They're not born out of it. They are a part of it. In the Western ear, we create something, we make it, we mold it into creation and beat it into form. That's why a lot of music in Western ear is just like, all right, let's start the song. Done. And everybody's like, song over, done. Well, in the Eastern, it's, song could be 5 minutes or 45 minutes. There's not a descriptive way to do it with the ragas and the mantras. So this is something we're going to be talking about a whole lot, and I will never talk about this unless we are talking about it in correlation with singing. Does that make sense? Cool. So I'm just going to get rid of it right now. And then our aforementioned, why we use C, you're absolutely correct. There are no sharps. There are no flats. This, in the Western ear, is called a diatonic scale. When you have the diatonic scale, you have this primary note on a clef. Now, from just this, we've learned a lot, and here's where it gets interesting. We all know this is a staff, right? And it has a measure, and it has a clef, and it has a note. Does anybody know what note that is? And where it's located on the piano?
I do not.
Cool. Here is a very interesting thing. This little line here below the treble clef is called a ledger line. Ledger line. When you get older, a bank, if you do checks, write checks, the things you write your check. I wrote a check on this date for this amount of money for this place, and here's what it was. You rip it out. On that line that you wrote the check for, the thing that you remember, the information, it's on a ledger line. So this is a ledger line. There's information on here. This is the most important note in all of music right now for us. It is C. Can everybody come over here at least where we can look at the piano? Whenever I hold up two solids like this, one hand could go in a grouping of 3, one hand could go in a grouping of 2. Wherever we put our grouping of 3, that's enough. But here, on any grouping of 2, that's a C. So C1, C2, C3, C4, or middle C. 5, 6, 7, 8. Most important. This is actually when you're playing, you just view the bass clef as being the F clef, those notes, and then the treble clef, those notes. Little vagity in between, but when we learn how to play music, we learn.
So that's the divided in the middle.
Yeah, it is. It divides it into the two palatable intonations or registers. This would be considered like mezzo tenor to alto, and then soprano, and then mezzo soprano. And I don't know anybody. I've only met one person in my life that was able to hit these notes. It was ridiculously high. It was unbelievably high. Anyway, when we're doing these, the registers fall here. So in the key of C, when we talk about scales, this is our diatonic scale. Right? It's crazy high. Diatonic scale. When we play all the notes that are in betwixt them, that's called a chromatic scale. So when we have... There's a certain way to play each one of these scales, and each one of these scales has a fingering pattern. All of the ones that begin with the white keys are all 1, 2, 3 under. Except F. When we do our crossovers and cross unders, we always use our middle finger except for F. And here's the reason why it's interesting and fun. Let's pick you already know A major, right? You know D major, and you know E major. They feel exactly the same. If you close your eyes, you can put your finger in between these two. If you go up to D, oh, you can do the same thing. So your brain goes, oh, I don't need my eyes, do I? I can play by feel. Does that make sense? So the whole idea is when you play C, this finger hangs out here. Well, where else does that happen? Oh, G. 1, 5. Whenever you play a 1, 5, you know that that's going to be the way that that feels, always. So if you're doing like... you will always have the feeling of these two notes. So who cares if you do a 2-note slide instead of just a 1 note? Does that make sense? You get your diaton there. So you build your own preferences. That works with everything. When you start seeing 1 to 5 is a 5th above, we're going to talk about this on the staff. Anytime you have a perfect 5th above, you have a perfect 4th below. When we play these in opposite directions, and we include the sharps and flats that are in the key, this is a great way to start hearing harmonizations, melodies. These are the things that we learn in practice form, and then those are the things that we... things we use for improv. Does that make sense? Like all those little things we were just doing, they're all part of C major. I didn't hit any of the black notes. Unless I want to move through two different keys. The whole idea is learning one key. What key is the key that we're going to learn how to play? All day long. When you play C major and you just start from a different note inside of its key, you are doing all the modes. We'll talk about modes, but they're just feelings. So if we did... we could do F Lydian. That B works because it's in the key of C and it's in the key of G. Not in the key of F. But when we play a Lydian, it has an augmented fourth and it makes it feel light and airy. Like Van Halen. Cool. So, finding middle C is super, super important. Middle C. This is called an octave. When we go 2 octaves, it's called a compound octave. So what I want to show you right now on the board is something called the landmark series. And this is a great way to be acclimated. Also, let's break this down in brass tacks. When musicians that are professionals are reading music and somebody like hands them a piece of music and they're like, and they just start playing it, it's not that they have some superhuman power. We simply have put so much time and effort into some of the things that we were talking about there that it becomes secondary nature to just play those. So when somebody reads the clef, they're not just reading C, skip a note, and getting this like chord. Does that make sense that when you have 3 notes that are stacked upon themselves, you play them like this? If this is a C, and we know that C major has no sharps and flats, how does one lay out the chord? What triad is this? What lines are those?
What is it like one like every space? So like
Yeah, you just skip one. Because, I mean, truthfully, if we were just to do this,
if
right?
we're doing chromatic, like we like go in between 2.
You betcha. And we would have half steps in there. And I guess a good thing that we could describe right now is the constitution of a major scale in a diatonic. The first one is called Ionian. This kind of modus is just the major scale. That's what all music is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's the solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And the reason why is because of the spacings. We have a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. These intervals, when we see them through the key of C, C naturally has them. In the key of C, there is a half step between E and F, making E sharp, F, or F flat, E. B sharp is C. C flat is B. We wouldn't say C, D, E, F, G, A, C flat, C. Even though it is.
Yeah.
Why?
Because well we got
Alphabet.
yeah.
You have to use all 7 notes. So when we're playing diatonically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, half steps are between 3 and 4. When we shift keys and we start viewing keys in something other than C that has no sharps and flats, we move in 5s. Well, it makes sense that we call the first note in every scale the tonic, or the foundation, the root. It's the one that everything's built off of. The interval from that is called a major second. Major third, major 6, major 7. There is a perfect 4th, perfect 5th, and perfect 8th as the resolution. You will not see me write P8 or the C onto which that the half step resolves to, because there are only 7 notes in a diatonic scale. When I write it on the stave, yes, you will see me utilize all of these. And really quick, does anybody notice that I've got 4 notes on one side of this measure and 4 notes on the other? There's a lot of stuff going on right here. Can we just make some reference to it so we can start building some vocabulary? What was this first note again?
C.
Cool. This one is also called what?
The root.
The root, or the tonic, or the prime. Doesn't matter what you call it. Root, tonic, prime, foundation. When you have 2 notes that are exactly the same, like I can't play C other than middle C. I can't hit this A, 440, the frequency. When you hear A, 440, the reason why it's called a 1-to-1 ratio is the note you're hitting is in 440, which means that every time you hit a peak here and every time you hit a trough here, the distance between the two is gonna vibrate 440 times. When you play A, which isn't just 440, but you play it up, you might have one that doubles that. So if you have something that doubles this, you would have 2 peaks and troughs. Sorry, horrible drawing. 880. That's an octave. That's our P8. Does that make sense? Cool. So when you look at like 15,000 oscillations, when you're hearing a saxophone, they're like, wee, the reed is vibrating 15,000 times in frequency, producing that high note.
50,000 times per watt.
Per oscillation. So, how do I explain this? When you're playing something along the lines of this C, it's oscillating like this, and it gives you a note. When you do this and you change that to 880, that would be 2-to-1. Why? You're doing twice the amount of movements. These are called ratios, by the way. When you have a ratio of 5-to-4, that means that out of every 5 of these that you do, there are going to be 4 of these in between, and that gives you your 4th.
Oh yeah, because also like too, like our ears, like it doesn't hear all this, it just hears.
Correct. So when you're playing a chord or a triad, do you remember how to name this? What was this note called on the ledger line? It was called the root, the prime, but if it has a tone name, what's the name of this tone?
C.
C. If we skip the note that's right after C, which is the bottom, underneath the treble clef, the space right before the bottom line, that's the D, which makes the bottom line of the treble clef what?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Wait, the bottom line.
Yeah, the bottom line would be a,
E.
yeah. So whilst with me, I've never seen another teacher really do this. You're gonna see me do this all the time. I mean, I'm sure you've seen me do that out there, right? Cool, try it. 1, 3, 5. So
it's probably pretty easy to read a chord then, like you could just see it, like you see it in that.
very much so. The reason why musicians that read music are good at it is because they know exactly what C major looks like. Because each one of these, when you go, they have a particular pitch. Well, knowing that, when I practice singing a third above there. So I hear, in my mind, I'm visualizing me singing that note in a scale above. These are called dyads.
So that'd be like this, like.
Correct. Correct. These are called dyads. Notice how when you play these, they're stacked right above. Does that make sense? The reason why a diatonic scale consisting of 7 notes is called a diatonic scale is because the first 2 notes of every triad determine whether a chord has a major seniority or a minor seniority. Very good job. And listen, you tree. This is a lot of information. What you're doing right now, this is already week 3 in a beginning music college level course. Everything you've already done. Does that make sense? So just a quick respite. Up to this point, did you get 10 out of 10? 5 out of 10? 2 out of 10? How are we sitting with all this information?
I think like an 8 out of 10.
Okay, cool. Right on. That's good. How about yourself? And be honest.
Yeah, time to be honest.
Yeah, be honest.
It's not gonna be 10 out of 10 probably.
Huh?
8.
About 8. Cool.
I agree.
About cool. Awesome. So when I like take away stuff like, oh, that's the ledger line, or like we talk about this. If I said, what's another name for the treble clef? You could say the treble clef is the
Middle C of what?
yeah. You could say it's a fifth from C, but what is that fifth?
G.
Yeah. Treble clef is otherwise known as the G clef. Yeah, for sure. If that's how CL, yeah. If that's how that works, what is the bass clef known as? And here's what we're looking at. Ready? I'm gonna draw another stave or a staff. Yeah.
I know the bass clef too is in another key.
It is. So here's where I'm gonna put my bass clef, and watch what we're doing here. Ready? Whenever you tie a staff to another staff, it stops being just a single staff and it becomes something called the grand staff. Very good. When we look at this, and here's the reason why I love music theory and I love testing brains of younger individuals. Sometimes if you're an old dog, you can't teach it new tricks. But the whole idea behind all this is when you're young, it's all new and fresh, so you can, kind of, depending. This was called the circle of fifths. It's otherwise known as the circle of fours, because one way you go C, D, E, F.
G.
Yeah. What comes after G? G, A, B, C,
D.
D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A,
B.
B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp. Because F natural's up here. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp. Cool. These are all the keys that have sharps. No sharps and flats. And it looks like this. When we add our first sharp in the key of G, it is necessary for us to be able to say, I know what a clef is. I know that the clef is the G clef. And as soon as we start reading these as dyads, we then throw in what note?
G.
Yeah, this is the root. What is G in the key of C? It's the,
Fifth.
yeah. So when we have a 1, 3, 5, what we're saying is tonic or root, major third, and then perfect fifth. Always. The only thing is, this chord is not a major. If we played all music, just it was like happy, happy, happy music, all in majors. Life isn't happy that way. You guys probably know this, right? I'm not going to tell children that life's not all sunshine and butterflies, but it's the yin and yang of life.
I know I was always confused. I was like, when I first started playing piano, I was trying to make everything major.
Yeah,
I was
it's because
like,
you want to
okay,
hear it that way.
then I was playing C, then I was like, okay, E, so then I guess I'm going E major.
Yeah, and all the chord progressions do too. I remember playing guitar and not being able to play a chord and be like, whoa, when am I ever going to use that chord? Now I use it all the time. So the whole idea behind doing this is we are seeing intervals and we are seeing their correlation. When we do a major, it is a 1, 3, 5. When we do a minor, it is 1 flat 3, 5. So the whole idea is when I say this major second or major third, it's hard to talk music in this because the intervals from the foundation to the major second, it's a distance of a whole step. Because all music is generated from the shortest interval, which is called a minor second or a half step, or it's also called a diatone. Hence,
So half step would be just from there.
you betcha. Our chromatic scale is the diatonic movements of a half step. So when we alter those, we could say, well, what is a minor second plus a minor second?
Whole step?
Yeah, major second, a whole step. What's a minor second plus a minor second plus a minor second?
That'd be from here to
Cool.
third, I guess.
watch the musical
minor.
explanation. Ready? C to C sharp is a minor second. Well, let's name it that. Diatonic scale doesn't have these, but the chromatic scale most definitely does. If this in between C and D is a minor second, the note in between D and E must be a minor.
Third.
You betcha.
So then it just goes minor fourth, minor fifth.
You got it, but the idea is there's no whole tone between the
Oh, yeah,
3 and the
from
4.
here, from here.
So if you want to look at it like a augmented third, sure. Anytime you go up in tone, it's called an augmentation.
Yeah.
You go sharply. Anytime there's a diminishment, you go flatly. Raising sharply, or falling flatly. That's the way the notes move. So this right here on the board, what is that doing?
It's going up.
Yeah, it's augmenting.
Uh-huh.
Cool, that's it. That's the big takeaway. When we go the other way, let's go 4 notes way. Ready? F, G, A,
B.
and these are all flats. B flat, C, D,
E flat.
you betcha. E flat, A, no, that's not how the words work. E flat, F, G,
B.
A flat. My brain doesn't work either. So, A, B, C.
B flat.
Cool. This.
Oh yeah, they're the same.
They're the same. The college level word is called enharmonic equivalencies. Ready? Let's say it 3 times fast. Enharmonic equivalencies, enharmonic equivalencies, enharmonic equivalencies. Right? Silly. Enharmonic equivalencies. Woo! Jeez. Harmonic. What does harmonic mean?
It means.
Play that dyad again.
Wait.
Play 2 notes together. How'd that feel?
Harmonic.
Harmonic. It felt like there was a tone and another tone, so they created something called a harmony. And it's exactly what you alluded to earlier. When we hear this, we don't hear the whole thing. We hear another note that's on top of it, and then when we're playing a triad, we hear where those harmonic notes interfere with each other, and it rattles our fluid-filled sac on the inside of our ear.
If you play if you play like a 2-string instrument, like if you strum them, you almost like hear like a 3rd string in there.
Yeah, I'm playing an instrument called a sanshin. It's an instrument that's tuned in fourths. It has a low C, an F, and then a C. It's very interesting. So the whole idea is when you're playing a triad, it's very awkward and hard. The instrument itself is not meant to be a melodic instrument. It's meant to be an individually picked instrument which has melodies, and it's really cool. When you listen to music from China and like the Japan and China, in like all the dynasties and all the centuries leading up to the ukulele, they're the exact same instrument, just strung differently with different stringing systems and different feeling. Cool. So we got the idea of this. If we do minor second to the, how about we just do it with powers now? Have you guys gotten to exponents? In math location, like if I wanted to do 10 times 10, I don't have to do 10 times 10 right like that. I can just write 10 to the 10th. Exponents take you out those decimal places for all your numbers. So like this one is the one we do like cubed. When you're trying to find dimension or volume for stuff, you can use that in a mathematical equation. It's much easier. This is algebraic stuff, but when used in music, rather than me just writing minor second, minor second, minor second, minor second equals a major third, we just kind of remember these. A perfect fifth, when you get down to it, is how many? This is a major second, minor third, major third, fourth,
Minor 4th.
and then we'd augment that fourth or a flat 5, and then perfect fifth. There are 7. So you just get used
7
to where.
all just from
Yeah, just from there. And when you look at it, yeah. And when I'm trying to explain it, I try to explain them like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom, perfect fifth. So you hear those diatones and they move around. Enharmonic equivalencies. We put these 3, but every one of these has one. Let's think about it. E sharp was what?
is. Give me a F5.
Yeah, F. C, D, E. we kept going with our
I mean, it just
circle, it just, yeah. It just gets weird because then we get to a thing in here where we're using those accidentals. And in our accidentals, we know that we have this, right? Sharp. We know that we also have, did I draw that backwards? I did. What a goof. Oh no, sorry, never mind. Diminishment. Augmentation. We have a flat, right? Anytime you do not see an accidental on something, it's called this. Do we know what that's called?
Natural.
Boom. There you go. How'd you know that?
And I can see it.
Nice. Very good. Nah. Well, since you can see it, I'm just going to abbreviate it. Flat? I guess that's right. Doesn't look right. Looks like fiat. You ever look at words and they look weird? Yeah? When you say words over and over again, you realize they lose meaning because words don't mean anything.
Like
It's
a
only
Fiat car, I thought it was flat at first.
Yeah, for sure. Or like ball, 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 ball. If you say it 1,000 times, it loses all meaning inside your head. Because words are all just pitches and ideas, aren't they? All right, going through here, the whole idea is there aren't just 3 of these. We also have something called a double sharp. And we have something called a
Double flat.
double flat, you guessed it. If we kept going, F, G, A, B. B double flat is an A. E double flat is a D. A
Oh,
double
so
flat is
double
a G.
flat would be a whole step then?
You betcha. It's a major second. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
These are college level ideas, but the idea is why not teach this in the beginning? Does that make sense? The reason why music didn't make sense to me is because it was a watered down version of what music should have been. Does that make sense? And I don't know if it was the teachers I had just didn't know any of the other information, knew just enough. But these were the things that I learned, and I was like, oh, now I know how to play music, and I can create music. And when I listen to music, it makes more sense. For some people, it doesn't work that way. They do not care about this. And you do not need any of this to have fun with music. That has to be a preface at this point, okay? Only for certain things. So each one of these can have double sharps, double flats. If we did a B flat, and we're looking at this being sharply, C sharp, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, G sharp is A flat. G, A, B, C, D. D sharp is E flat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. We call them by the easiest name so we don't have to remember a whole bunch of things. When we're playing these triads,
B flat.
you gotcha. When we're playing these triads and we start manipulating these notes to get triads, the whole idea from talking about a diatonic scale, dia being the beginning of this, it's because it's based off of the positioning of the first 2 notes of that scale. Which brings me to the most important term in music that I did not learn until I was teaching music and I took a lesson, somebody's like this, and it dawned on me. All music is tertiary. All music is a correlation of thirds. Whenever you make a chord and add a note, it's a third you're adding, generally.
Yeah, because you're just adding if you play C major, then you just add the next little yard is going to be
You betcha.
the same as.
Some get weird. Like if we were gonna do like a G sharp, diminished 7, sharp 11. Yuck. But let's look at it. Oh, hold on. Let's make this easier. Let's play this one. C. Actually, let's just do a little easier. C diminished 7, add sharp 11. Here's our C major, right? What is the 7th in the key of C where there's no sharps and flats?
That's B.
Cool. So we're going to throw our B note up here. Without even changing it to what it's supposed to be, look how those notes are stacked. They're all stacked in thirds. How do you make any major a minor? You flatten or you diminish the mediant.
Oh, the median?
It is. They all have a lot of names, and these are all college level names. The tonic, the root, the foundation, the prime. Well, this one is called the subtonic. The middle note is called the mediant. This is called the subdominant because it pulls almost all the tension. It's like you and I are playing musical tug of war, and if we play a C, it wants to go to the dominant, the G. But if it can't go to the dominant, the subdominant is just as good. It still builds tension, but then the resolution is great.
Wait, the subdominant would be A?
F
Oh,
in the
F.
key of C.
Oh, yeah.
The one that builds the third amount of tension would be the sub mediant, which is the 6th. And then my favorite to talk about always is called the lending or the leading tone. Can't get into it now because I would just break our brains with the full explanation for it, but most people that play music don't understand that there are majors and minors. When you do understand there is a major and a minor, it's not just the mediant changing a chord from a major chord to a minor chord, but it's how you, when you turn it to the minor, how you also flatten the 6 and the 7 to make a minor scale, and then reintroducing back in those natural notes gives you a feeling. And just an overview so you see it, so it's not lost on it, we'll go back into it. Flattening the 3, flattening the 6, and flattening the 7th gives us C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. By putting back in the B natural, that resolution and tension release is greater. That's called harmonic minor. Again, major, all of the notes. Minor, all of the same notes, but then we add in flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7. Tension, huh? Putting back in the natural 7th is called harmonic minor. And the reason why is any chord in the key of C that had a B in it is now this note. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, when we talk about C has a relative minor, I show it through the shaka. G is a Z, C is A, F is D. But the idea is you go up a 6. So blah, 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 blah. And the key is C. C, D, E, F, G, A. Yeah, so when we see the key signature, no sharps and flats, this is the key of C, and it's the key of A minor. So when we try to go for a 7th, that means that we must have the minor 7th, and we have a diminished, which means the building of a diminished is going to be 1, flat 3, flat 5, altering the major. So when we add these notes, if we keep going, what's the 11th in the key of C? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, cool. 1, 2, 3, 2. Cool. We're missing a tertiary note. That's the 9th. We can hear it if we want to. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. In fact, if you want to get rid of the 5th in any chord because you have too many notes inside the chord, the ear will naturally put the 5th back in. You don't even have to worry about it when you're composing. We'll talk about that later. When we do this, we have to have a B flat, E flat, and then our F, we said sharp 11, right? Well, that's the 11th. What's a sharp 11? It goes to the augmented 4th or the flat 5.
Which is
Right in between F and G. So that's an enharmonic equivalent. F sharp. Boom.
or G flat.
Play our C diminished 7 out of 11. Cool, there's our C, E flat, A flat. Then we've got a B flat. And now F sharp.
Oh, F sharp.
Gorgeous.
Is that here?
Yeah, isn't that a cluster of awesomeness? Now, the whole idea is all these chords are subverse and they belong in certain progressions and stuff. So, having said that, what we just saw was how to build our chords. Now, I frankly have to tell you that you guys have just gotten to the end of what a beginner course would be. We explained the staff, how to look at tertiary harmony through the eyes of chords or triads. Chords or triads can be manipulated by diminishing or augmenting. We learned that if a chord or a note is not diminished or augmented, like in the key of C, it's called a natural, and that there are double sharps and double flats, which help us to do hypothetical keys, which help us to learn. Our focus in the beginning is going to be on reading the circle of fifths, seeing family keys, and that's what we're going to kind of end on here in a minute, and being able to read scales and then play them on any instrument and or sing those. Does all that kind of make sense from here? Cool. The only other triad that you did not see as a part of this is called an augmented triad. There are only 4 types of triads, and then there's additions to them, so you could have half diminished, full diminished. But the 4 different types are as such. 1, 3, 5. Can you play C major? 1, 3, 5. whenever in music you alter anything for a key change or a tempo change, you put a double beam and you put your clef again. You do not need to have the time signature again.
Wait, put a what?
You put a double beam. So like, let's say we're in a piece of music and we're playing in the key of C. No sharps and no flats. And I wanted to take this C chord and I wanted to show you how it does the same thing in the key of G. So when we're playing C, I could have C, E, G, right here. That's a C major chord. And then when we go to the key of G, I put a double bar, darken it, and then put my clef again. You do not need to put time signatures. Yeah, a key change or a time signature change or a key signature change, they will change your beam. They change it to have it 2 bars down the middle. So if we were doing the same thing here, sorry. Being in the key of G doesn't alter that chord, does it?
No.
No, because that top line is G, A, B, C, D, E, F. C,
Which is
D, E, F. Yeah, there's no note there, so it doesn't matter. So it's safe to say that, yeah, in the key of C, in the key of C, it's your prime. Well, how about these? These are the ones on that circle of fifths that are its family chords. Right next to
Which
it.
is the 1, 4, 5.
You betcha, 1, 4, 5.
Because
So
all,
in the
all the
key-
notes are like the same for a chord, are the same in the
Correct.
every note in the C.
Yeah. So when we view this, I can say, cool, how about C mixolydian? It's one of the modes. The telltale factor of C mixolydian is we write out our major, I grab my 4, and then we flatten the 7. That's what makes a mixolydian. Well, when we draw our circle O fifths, that's what visually we look at. If I wanted to play like the key of F, I would just move this
Oh, yeah,
over.
because that's all the notes in
Yeah.
key of F.
Yeah, cool. Does that make sense? Coolness. And then when we do that, we would add this next note. We would move this down here and go, cool, I don't want to do that one. I want to do mixolydian. Well, what's the note right after B flat? E flat. F, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. Rather than E, F, E flat, F.
So
Major second.
So mixolydian is just you take, so like if we're playing in like in this key, then we just turn that to.
Correct. So in that key, we were doing this: D, G, and A. This is 1, 4, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7.
Instead
D,
of,
E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. If you did not want that, take it off here, throw it right there. Minor 7th. So in this, you go, cool, major 7th if I want it here, minor 7th over here. It keeps moving that way when you want to see 6 or something. But we'll get into that when we start doing modes in the circle fifths. But the truth is, the big takeaway from this is the foundation of musical theory. If you can just see these as being interesting, the only other thing I didn't explain here is anytime you see a semicolon in music, it's music analyzation. On the clef, we should have a dot there and a dot there. I don't know if they put them on there. Yeah, there's one up there. See how the bass clef has 2 dots? Absolutely. Whenever you're sight reading music, you are doing music analyzation. That's the whole point of it. And again, this didn't come about till a long time afterwards. There are multiple clefs, if I have to remember. I think there's 13 of them. We just don't use all of them. There's like alto clef, baritone clef, C clef, B clef. They're all used for different instruments and for singing. And then one of the last things I just wanted to talk about, because we didn't really touch upon it, the bass clef is called the... You betcha. We're not going to get into it right now, but I really want you to see the benefit of, I don't know, doing some legwork on your own. C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and then C flat. Relative major and minor is the most important thing that I want you guys to know. Cool. So we did it in the key of C. C, D, E, F, G. Cool. Let's do it in G. Ready? G, A, B, C, D. The bottom line of the bass clef is a G, which means the bottom line of the treble clef is a boom.
oh, so the bass clef is relative minor.
You got it. If you, I've never had one teacher that showed me this, but if you can memorize this, you will never have an issue finding a note on the clef again. Does that make sense? And it doesn't matter if it's F sharp or F natural or F flat. It doesn't matter. How about this? The top line of the treble clef is an F. If F is the sixth, you can either go up some notes. You could be like, okay, F, G, A, or you could go F, E, D, C, B, A. Sixth, one. Is this an F in the key of C? Yes, it is. The top line of the bass clef must be a A. Good job. Does that make sense? The middle line of the treble clef is a B. B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now, all of these are in the key of C or A minor. There's no sharps and flats. But as soon as you're like, well, what's the one sharp in the key of G? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the second sharp? Yeah, D has two sharps. This is the key of D. It has a B minor. So if you're like, cool, B is the middle line on the treble, what's the middle line on the bass clef? D. When you count them, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That C is the same as that C. There is not a whole universe in between here. It just means that we're not writing our clefs right next to each other where it's impossible to read. You put a verification or a gap in here so your hands know how to discern between. But there is no difference between drawing this note, which is a B, or drawing this note. They are both the same. That is a lot of information. At this point, how do you think you did?
Good.
Cool. The whole idea is to go back through this silly long video and look at it, see if you could write stuff down in a music notebook, and the next time you're playing around on your instrument of choice, just think fondly of it. The whole idea of this is all practical application. Next time we get together, we're going to focus on the circle of fifths. Cool? I'll send a little video. I'll send 2 videos. One's 2 minutes, and it's just like drawing it. The other one's me blah, 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 blah about it. Cool? The other one's like 30 minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing. And all this is all suggestions. You can do as much of this or as little as you want to. But I definitely tell you, if you practice this stuff and we get to a point where you guys are all completely fluid with this, the next step is doing musical analyzation, listening to like Tchaikovsky or Jewel or Beethoven or Metallica. It does not matter what it is. You will be able to use musical theory analyzation to go, oh, this is in the key of, this is the rhythmic pulse that it does, these are the time signatures it uses, these are the instruments that I hear doing it, this is what they would look like on the staff, here's the main motif, here's what the motif looks like in a period, here's where the altercation of the motif happens. And when you talk about that, you might not know what a motif is now, but when you learn all this, it becomes everything. Does that make sense? So like the music of life is kind of like, I hear people honking their cars and I hear them, wait, beep, boop, boop, wait, boop, boop, wait. Those are all notes. Bum, boom, bum. You could turn anything into music concepts. Did we have fun?
Yeah.
Groovy. Excellent job today. Any questions? There's a lot.
So I think what really helped me is like mixolydian is basically I just found out like so like it's basically like say if mixolydian at G would just be C, but you start at G, right?
Mixolydian in C would be G. Let me.
Like this would be G mixolydian to go.
Correct. You would have an F natural, and here's the way that here's how most teachers teach it. I don't like teaching it this way because you miss the vital point of why to do modes. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. When we do these notes in Congress, we find that the tetrachord that is created off of one side of the stave, these, and the secondary tetrachord all have value to each other. They're equal parts. With one, you can't have the other. Meaning, when you shift where that half step is betwixt these two, and then here, you have altered the feeling of where all the 1 to 5 is wanting to go. So when you move this chord to here and you get this secondary thing, it's called Dorian. What would D Dorian be called in the key of C? It's called the minor 2, D Dorian. The third scale degree is called Phrygian. I won't go into all of them, but if we were going to be doing the key of G, which is G, A, B, C, D, E, E, F sharp. Notice I put the dot, which should be this, but I'm lazy. It's for our diminished chord. Major chord, minor chord, minor chord, major chord, minor chord, diminished chord. Major third, minor third, minor third, major third, major third, minor third, minor third. This has stacked thirds, minor thirds. Minor third, major third, major third, minor third. Just flips. When we're talking about these, and we would want to do like a Phrygian. In the key of C, we would have E Phrygian. The notes of E Phrygian are gorgeous, right? It feels the same way in here. Can you hit a B for me? We just start the scale from B, right?
Yeah.
And you play the rest of the notes. But the point of these are to know what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is as a mood, and then alter that. When you alter these and you get something like this, this is called Locrian, because it has and it just builds ridiculous amounts of tension. And the reason why we know Locrian as Locrian is because it's the same thing as Phrygian, but it has the 5. Phrygian is 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. The reason why we know Phrygian is that is because Dorian is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, natural 6, flat 7. And the reason why we know Dorian is that way is because we know what Aeolian is, which is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the two major ones that we know how to do in the beginning are how to play a minor scale and how to play a major scale. So whenever I say, how do you make a major or minor? You say you flatten the 6, you flatten the 3, flatten the 6, and flatten the 7. So in any key, if we're like, it gets harder, it gets weird and hard. So if you're like B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and here's a little precursor to what might be coming up. Key of B, there are 5 sharps. The sharp in the key of G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sharp in the key of D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sharp in the key of A. Why am I saying 5? Circle of
Fifths.
yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sharp in the key of E, and then lastly the sharp in the key of B. How do you make any major or minor?
From the
Third and the
6 and the
7.
you betcha. Why does D major and B minor share the same key? They have 2 sharps. Does that make sense?
yeah, just like how A flat, A minor and C are the share because
Yeah.
both have no flat.
So look at this. What key has 2 sharps? D. Well, what key has 3 sharps?
F sharp.
Ooh, F sharp minor. No, F. Yeah, F sharp minor has 3. And the reason why, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B,
Oh, yeah.
C sharp, D sharp, E. How do you make a major or minor? Wing, wang, wang. How come it has 3 sharps? Shares the key with A. Cool? So these are my 3 sharps right here, right? When we take something like this and we're like, okay, B major. Well, what if we played B Lydian? We just augmented the 4th. Now there are 3 sharps. B Lydian is A major. And you see if I got rid of this, we would just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A major, B minor, B Dorian. The second scale degree is always B Dorian. B Dorian spelling is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Modes are hard to understand. I'm sorry we went into that, but if you enjoyed that, you're going to love modal theory. You're going to love seeing how, when you're playing in the key of C and you play D to C back and forth, you're going to love this too. We'll end on this. Hear how that note doesn't feel so out of place. It's because it's the major third in the key of D. Your ear wants to hear that regardless of where you're going with it. Cool. Good job today. A lot of information. Very good. Woo! I've done a 3-hour class before. That was fun. Although I got a lot of blank stares. Okay, can you take one with next time you come back? Just bring it with you. Okay, so I would say go over the circle of fifths. I'll send you 2 videos, a long form and then a short form. And then also, if you have the opportunity to sit down at a piano, go over the ideas that we just did, playing along with those tertiary harmonies. If you have a music notebook, start writing all this nonsense down. And remember, this was a lot of information. This kind of thing we probably wouldn't be able to do that way. We would probably take little bite-sized portions and talk about just the circle fifths, or just how to create majors or minors or diminished or augments. When we're talking about the staff, learning how to sight read music doesn't happen like that. It takes quite a while. But the whole idea is to have fun with it and go through the time it takes to learn these things slowly. It's good seeing everybody. We'll see you next week. Aloha.